What's up, everyone?
Welcome back. The other day, someone commented on one of our YouTube videos saying to share some mistakes that we've made, and I thought that was a great idea. We made the mistakes for you so you don't have to make them. So
quite a few mistakes.
We have made many mistakes over the 5 years in business, but we will just share some of our, maybe our favorite, funniest ones, our biggest mistakes, our saddest mistakes, and the biggest financial mistakes that we can really think of to share in this video.
One thing that I will say before we get into it is that every single one of these mistakes, while some of them very painful, I wouldn't change them, because now when you make a mistake, you particularly a financial mistake, you very much learn the lesson.
Yes.
And I wouldn't change them because now we have the lessons and we won't make those same mistakes again, at least hopefully.
Yeah, and sometimes you do make the same mistake in a different way, which also, it's just all a learning thing. So, like Nick said, we've learned from it, and you're going to make mistakes. Even if you watch this video, you're going to make your own mistakes, and that's okay. Hopefully you can come out the other side. Sometimes it might be a life-changing mistake. For us, there have been ones that have been putting us on the fence of failure, but we've always overcome them so far. So.
And if you're making mistakes, that means you're trying stuff. So at least you're out there doing it. If you're sitting back and doing nothing and you can't make a mistake, you're like, oh wow, I haven't made any mistakes. But it's like, well, what were you trying?
The first thing that I wanted to talk about were big financial mistakes, and the really overarching thing is overbuying inventory. We've made this is like, for example, one that we have made the same mistake in different ways, and from the very beginning, like a few months in, we were like, we want to buy graphic t-shirts with our logo on them. And the number one reason that we personally have overbought inventory in every situation, and you might find yourself doing this as well, is that there are most of the time price breaks at the more that you buy. So if you buy one graphic t-shirt, it might be $50, but if you buy 200, it might be 10. So you find yourself saying, okay, well, how can I sell this amount to get this much savings?
And they're very smart in how their price breaks are set up. You're like, you know, it puts you there and you're like, oh wow, that's good. But then you can kind of, now that you've bought 20, you're like, oh, the next price break is at 40. So maybe I just stretch a little bit because I'm going to save like $2 at that. Then when you get to 40, you're like, oh, the next price break is at 100. We're almost at 50. So might as well get the 100 and save another few dollars. And so you can logically convince yourself up to like an absurd number, which is what we did.
The lessons that I've learned is that they were graphic tees with our logo on it. First of all, we hadn't built a brand at that point, so why was someone going to buy a t-shirt for a brand that they didn't know and love yet? Number two is that the design, it was just our logo big on the back, and then I used like black writing just to say Tails Up Up. I would just do it differently and better now. I would hire a graphic designer to make it more appealing and more fun to the general public.
I don't know if you already said this. This was literally like our first like 6 months of business.
And we bought like, I don't know. I really don't know, but it was probably around like 200 or 100.
I think it was 300 shirts, maybe.
No, it definitely was not 300. That was way too many. Probably it was like between 100 and 200, but at the time it was way too many for us.
It filled our entire porch with those boxes, and how many? I think 50 to 60 come in those boxes now if it's t-shirts, and we had like 5 or 6 of those boxes.
We could look it up, but
it was a lot.
It was a lot for the time, and it took us like years to sell them, just because they weren't really that cute. We hadn't built a brand, and there was one other thing I was going to say about, that people oftentimes get things like that for free, and so you have to find a way to differentiate it to make someone want to buy it, because really it is a promotional product for you, and there's these huge businesses who are like throwing them at people and giving these free logo t-shirts. So why is someone going to buy yours? And that's why I feel like I would hire a graphic designer now to create something fun and different. Maybe it's like a seasonal one, still incorporate our logo in a fun way, but I would just do it differently if I were to do it now. But I'm traumatized, and I don't see myself doing a graphic tee in the foreseeable future, because it was such a financial burden on us at the time, and it took so long to get rid of them.
Well, and now since we've learned that lesson, we're like, we'd have to buy way fewer of them. Then the price becomes like, oh well, you can't make any money on this at all. So
we made the same mistake in different ways with certain boxes before we did subscription.
Yes.
We overbought some of those, specifically like a Thanksgiving box, which just like people weren't interested in Thanksgiving, I guess, at that. I don't know why it failed, but we overbought, and people did not buy them. So we were stuck with these toys and treats and stuff for a while.
Well, this comes to another very important point, is every bad decision around the inventory that we've made, we've had a very rational reason to make the decision. So in the example of the Thanksgiving box, the month before, I think we had sold 100 boxes, and the month before that, 100 or 85.
We were consistently doing 100.
We were consistently doing 100, and so that was like, oh, well, we've been doing this for a while, so you would think that definitely would continue the next month, and maybe even more, because during that time, it's like, oh, this is a big buying time for people, so let's at least do the 100 again, and then like no one bought it.
And then the third major financial same situation, different way, was Nick purchasing some Christmas pajamas,
yes.
which again was the same thing.
Okay, the year before, we literally could not keep our pajamas in stock at all. Every time we'd get them back in stock, they'd sell out, and we'd do it again and again and again. So we were like, oh my gosh, pajamas are hot. They had been kind of hot the year before that, but not super crazy. But that year it was crazy. So next Christmas time is coming. We're like, guys, we have to have our ducks in a row, have the pajamas in stock, because the supplier did not have them in stock the year before. So we probably felt that we had missed out on at least 100 pajama sales. So we were like, well, you know what? Let's just do a very modest growth percentage, and let's just get maybe 30% more than we got last year.
And the year that we sold a ton, the most requested thing was matching tops to the bottoms.
Yes.
So, and we went higher quality. So
matching tops for the bottoms, and they wanted a woman's cut. We were doing unisex before.
We got everything that everyone asked for, and it was a higher price point because now it was a top and bottom. It was a higher quality pajama, and people just weren't willing to pay what they were. So we were we still have those pajamas right now. And also, it was a basic pattern, so people felt like they could get it somewhere else, which is mostly true, but it wasn't that quality. Like, it still is a very luxurious pattern cut quality. So, I don't know. It was a mistake that we used educational guesses to make, and it just wasn't worth it for us. So, that sucks.
I think what this is uncovering is maybe you have some things that you tend to fall into. This is a tendency that we fall into, and while we try to learn from this is a core tendency that we're always having to fight, because literally the very first time Danielle ever sent me to the fabric store, and I was allowed to buy my own fabric, of course, what did I do? I overbought, and we had that fabric for 3 years.
Nick has the personality of more is better. So, if he's eating and cooking, he's going to make way too much food. If he's shopping, he's going to buy way too many. He's just an over everything. So, that can come into business as well. But for the most part, I feel like you've learned a lot of things.
Yes. It's better to sell out, and even if you can't get it back or it's going to take a while, you at least sold out versus being stuck with way, way too much.
Okay, what's another mistake that you feel like we've made in business that has not to do with financial burdens of overbuying?
Well, it maybe has to do with hiring.
Okay.
So we have gone in this boom and bust cycle with hiring, I feel like. So in the beginning, it was just us, and we let it get to the point where it was literally unsustainable. We were working every single hour of the day, 7 days a week, and we're like, we have to hire somebody. So we did that, and it still was continuing to grow and grow and grow, and we were still feeling that way. So we said, we have to hire a lot of people because this is crazy. So we went out and we hired a ton of people, and it's not that it got slower. I think just once we had you don't necessarily realize how much one person can do that's working full time. And so we didn't really realize that at scale of more than one person. We had, 5 people? And so that they could do a lot of work. And so we realized, wow, we have to grow a lot if we're going to have all these people stay around, and that just didn't happen. And, people can do a lot more work than you think.
And I would say that, a solution now, knowing what we know, is to hire someone not for one specific thing, but that they can do multiple things. Because let's say, for instance, you hire someone and all they're going to do is sew, but maybe you don't have enough sewing work for them. If you teach them to package and, I don't know, marketing, whatever you need done, if they can do multiple things to fill their time, or you hire them for less hours that they only do those things for. But I would agree with all of that, and I feel like that also falls into something I was thinking about, which is specifically this office, but I feel like the overarching lesson is social media and society's pressure of what is successful and what is glamorous. Because the number one thing that I get from people who watch us and they're like, I one day want to have an office like you, I want to have this like you. And I'm like, okay, they see this beautiful, bright white space. I mean, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's very cute, and we have a fun time in here. And I would not change it for the world, because we would not be where we are today without the move into this space. But it is a huge financial burden. I don't know if that burden is the right, I mean, it's a huge financial cost. Yeah, it's a huge cost to not only have this space, but run this space. So I don't think that you need to put the society's pressures of having success look like this. It might not be for everyone.
You have to take your specific situation into account, and don't let what other people think is successful determine what decision you make.
For example, let's say to run this space is $50,000. How are you going to continue making the products that you're making, or selling the products that you're making, and also grow to be able to pay for the space when, like, the space itself isn't actually making you any money? So, like, that's not including employees and stuff. Like, wherever you're gonna move, it's gonna cost you something. So if you're in your house, which is where I feel like most small businesses start, in your house, there's no additional cost because you're already living there and you were gonna pay for that anyways. But as soon as you add an additional cost by moving somewhere else, now you most likely have to pay for where you are living and this new space. The space itself isn't making you any money, so how are you going to make the money to pay for that? And you might be locked into a contract that might be like the financially buying inventory too much. You might commit to too long.
And normally the commercial contracts are 3 to 5 year minimums.
Luckily, we did not fall into getting, I mean, I've heard a lot of longer contracts than 3 to 5 years.
7+ years, yeah.
So I would either negotiate a shorter contract, which is what we did, just so we could try it out and make sure that this was right for us. And even still, like, we might not be in this office forever, and we might grow into a bigger space. We might grow into a smaller space. It just is like you're learning your business, you're figuring it out. But overall, I would say, don't find success in what other people say, because you might be able to make more money. For you, success, I feel like everyone is different, but overall, a lot of people view success as in looks and in money. So you might be able to have a lot more money and a lot more success for yourself if you stay where you are, or don't go overboard with what will look the best. And yeah, I feel like that would be my overarching memo.
The last thing about the employees and over hiring was, when we did that, we got the other space, the other office space that we had for a short time. So if you don't know, we had 2 office spaces at one point, and we did that because we felt like we needed the additional space for the work, but also just where for all the people to go. And it was just one of those things where it's the exact same as the over hiring. It was, we maybe made the decision too quickly and jumped too far. Instead of going from 1 employee to 2 employees, we went from 1 employee to 5 employees.
But at that time, that amount of people would not really have fit in this space. So we had to make those mistakes to know.
We at least felt like we did. And so I guess the lesson from that is, even if you feel very stressed out and very like, I have to do this and I have to do it big right now, whether that's inventory, whether that's hiring employees, whether that's getting an office space, see if you can dip your toe in it and test it out a little bit. Because if we would have said, you know what, rather than hiring the 5, let's just hire 1 more person, even though we feel like at this time we really need the 5 people, hire the 1 more person and give it a month or 2 and just see. And if you still feel like you need the additional people, then go hire 1 more. Now you have 3 and you didn't make these massive jumps that can't come back. We got very lucky in the fact that everyone that we hired was either in college or something like that and ended up moving on. We, thank God, never had to fire anybody. It just ended up working out very nicely. But if we didn't, we might have gotten to the point where it's like, wow, this is too many people that we can't afford to keep on.
Yeah.
So I think testing the waters, dipping your toe in, and, you know, just not getting too crazy and saying, I need to go from 1 to 5. And in hindsight, even like saying this, it feels like, how could you not have known that was going to happen? But I promise you, sometimes in the moment, particularly when you put stress and all the things in there, it feels like maybe that is the right decision. You can rationalize it.
The last thing that I was thinking about is a mistake that we actually didn't make, but it's a common mistake. So if you are starting a business or looking for advice, my advice would be to not start with with the fanciest equipment, the nicest things, and start with the basics so that you are able to grow and not spend all of your money up front. So for example, for us, we bought a $100 sewing machine, we made our products, we made profit, we had money to then buy a $2,000 sewing machine. And so we didn't start with the $2,000 sewing machine, which allowed us to not be in debt in the beginning and to have more profits to grow at the very beginning.
Yeah, we definitely took those incremental steps along the way. One of the biggest ones, and it doesn't feel that way because the price is still a lot, but when we got into embroidery, we bought a used machine that was relatively cheap compared to like the machines that we have now, and that was allowing us to dip our toe in the water and test it out. I think the hardest part about this gets back to what Danielle was saying earlier about like society's expectations, is you see the people that are being successful that have the really fancy machines, have the nice sewing machine or embroidery machine. If you're like an e-commerce company and you're like creating content, you're like, I gotta get that nice, multi-$1,000 camera or else my videos are not gonna be good. Honestly, you can make great videos with an iPhone, you can sew bandanas or whatever with a $100 sewing machine, and you can embroider with a very, relatively cheap starting embroidery machine. And so start there until you really are forced to make the next jump and that you've built up some cash, and then you just incrementally go along the way, and eventually you will have all those nice things, but the things themselves generally are not going to be. I think the only exception for that might be is if you're jumping into something, if you've already been successful in one area, and you, as an example, if you were going to go from embroidering this certain things like dog mom stuff, and you're like, you know what, I want to start an entirely different business doing different embroidery, and then you could go ahead and get the machines for that because you've already proven your concept more or less. But I'd say even in that scenario, like maybe only get one machine to test it out because you never know. Every little market is different, so.
I feel like overall those are the biggest mistakes that we made in our business. Obviously we have made a ton of mistakes and learned a lot over the 5 years, but those are the biggest ones, and I hope that it gave you some insight, and hopefully you won't be able to make the same mistakes as us, but if you do, again, you'll learn from them and hopefully it'll be okay.
Well, the number one thing about learning, and that's what honestly this video is even about too, is when you make a mistake, it's okay, don't beat yourself up about it, but you have to review it and be like, okay, what were the things, why did I make that mistake, and how can I avoid doing it in the future? Sometimes mistakes are very painful and it can be very easy to just, you know what, this is a fluke, and just forget about it and not think about it. But if you don't think about it, you're not really going to learn from it.
I feel like it also goes to our biggest thing about people asking us how to start a business, and the biggest thing is that people just won't start because they look for perfection and
are scared to fail.
And the same thing goes with all these, like you need to make the mistakes to grow, to become successful, to be something bigger than what you are now. So know that it's okay and that mistakes are actually a good thing. In the moment it's very hard and you're probably mad at yourself, but when you look back you'll realize that it helped you get to where you are today, and that's how we feel right now, even talking about all these things again, is that it brought us to where we are today, and we're so grateful for that because we never imagined that we would be in this office, have these beautiful machines, have employees, and have an amazing community online. So it's just so cool that we are here today. And it's all thanks to you guys.
Thank all of you.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions and want another video like this, give us some topic ideas in the comments. We would love to help in any way that we can with what the knowledge we have about owning a small business is. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.